Hello everyone, my name is Joanna Kitoy-Hazek and I'm the Communications Officer at the Geneva Trade Platform. And this morning I have the privilege of having an exceptional, wonderful friend who's also one of the really good trade lawyers in Geneva, Kholo Kugler.
Thanks for inviting me, Joanna.
Yes, Kholo, it's so wonderful to have you here with us today. And Kholo is here with us because it's soon going to be International Women's Day 2025, and we wanted to honor that day by putting a spotlight on her and the work that she's been doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just a little bit about Kholo. She is counsel at the Advisory Center on WTO Law in Geneva. And she's also a non-resident scholar with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace Africa's program. And in the past, she was a PhD fellow in the project Trade Law 4.0. That sounds really fancy. And this was at the University of Lucerne, right?
That's it.
Where she researched also digital trade and AI regulation issues. So Kholo also regularly lectures trade law and digital trade law at academic and training institutions in Africa, in the Caribbean, in Europe, and in the United States. Yes! What a phenomenal background that is.
Thank you so much. You're so kind.
Oh, you're so welcome. This is a true representation of what you do. What drew you into the world of international trade?
Actually, my background is that I wanted to be a diplomat since I was a little girl. Didn't know quite what that was, but I wanted to be it. And so when I started studying, my dad actually wanted me to study engineering. And then I said to him, I don't want it. And then he was like, we need to study something. So I was like, political science. So I started doing political science as a major, and I found out that this is so interesting. Yeah. I want to get into this world. And just started to study about different political systems, international world order, dabbled in some economics. And then I think at that point, it became very clear that I wanted to do international law. And so, yeah, that's how I jumped into it. I finished my BA, and then I did a law degree. And then after that, no, actually between my law degree and my BA, I worked for about almost a year at what is now part of the AU. It was called NEPAD at the time. And that's when things really opened up for me, just being in the African regional organizations and how things work. That's how I started.
Wow. And I'm really curious to just understand, so you said you wanted to be a diplomat.
Yes.
And then you end up in political science. What was it about being a diplomat that appealed to you? And were you able to find that in what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I don't know. Kofi Annan was just somebody who was just so impressive to me as a little girl. Just looking at him, and he was just like the quintessential diplomat. And I just saw myself in that. I was just like, I want to be like the boss of the UN. And I'm not really the boss of the UN.
Not yet.
I work in UN City in Geneva, and that's really fun. And yeah, I didn't get into government in diplomatic roles, but just being in Geneva, working with diplomats. Working alongside them, supporting them at the Advisory Center, WTO Law, at the ACWL where I work, is just as close as I think I could have gotten without actually being a diplomat. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. By extension, you get that experience of wanting to be a diplomat through your conversations with the other diplomats as well.
Exactly.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how you were looking at Kofi Annan and he was very inspiring.
Yes.
So as a Black woman in international trade, what's one challenge that you have faced in an industry or basically in a sector that has historically lacked a lot of diversity, and how did you overcome this?
I think that's a very interesting question, because I think when you go to the UN or even the WTO, when you're looking at members in committee meetings or in general council or whatever, there is a lot of diversity just because they're about at the WTO 166 members, at the UN 190 plus, and you see just a lot of diversity because the whole is represented in those four in general council. But I think what has been interesting is where the sort of decision-making power lies. And that's when diversity becomes scarce. And I think for me, as a woman of color, as a Black woman, as an African Black woman as well, there aren't a lot of people that look like us in those four. Of course, We've got Dr. Ngozi, who is the first, sitting where she does, and just being in places where you have seen that the actual real power in how this world operates, how it works, is not in our hands and not in my hands, especially as a Black woman. And I think that's been a big education for me. And that's why I've made it my life's mission to break those molds and to sit on the table and count myself as one of those people that influences the world in my small little way. I don't have a lot of power.
Right.
But where I can sit on board, when I'm invited to write papers or articles to collaborate on projects, I always say, if not me, then who?
Yeah.
So that's been my little mission in the past few years, to a little bit of color.
Yes.
The color's needed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really encouraging to hear you say, just recognizing that you have agency in your little space.
Exactly.
Particularly right now with all the uncertainties and the shifts which are happening globally, especially as far as diversity, equity, inclusion programs are concerned. I think it's good to be reminded that in our little spaces we can still shift things in ways that make us feel like we're doing something meaningful nonetheless. I'm just going to stay on the geopolitical tensions for someone who enjoys studying international relations and the politics of it. So just given the geopolitical tensions are ongoing right now, how do you envision the role of women, especially women of color, going forward? And what sort of opportunities do you foresee?
First of all, I think there is a recognition, and we have to recognize that this is a very scary time for us, right? There's a rhetoric coming from the most powerful country in the world that we're not wanted.
Right.
Women in general, right? I think for many people, the elections in the US was not only about the extreme right, but also a nod to those who see women as less than, right? And then women of color as sort of rung down. And so it is a very scary time for us, and I think we need to recognize and say we're not in places where we're very welcome. But I think it's also a call to us to lean in, to hold our ground. I think women of color, that's the roles that we've played in society for a long time, to be the strength, to be the voice of reason when everybody's running around like a headless chicken. And I think that's where we should draw upon the power. Cool, calm heads, leaning in, showing up, stepping up, being counted when people want to discount us. So I think this is where, geopolitically, in our communities, in our workplaces, wherever, this is when we really need to be steadfast and say, hey, we don't stand for that. This is who we are. And I don't know, maybe I think this is our moment.
Right, yeah.
Bring some normalization in this craziness.
Yeah. So not to cower down in the face of the oppression that is coming from a very powerful country. And in terms of opportunities, so you're basically saying that is one moment, one opportunity that we can actually seize to get closer and to work stronger together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of thinking about international trade and the fact that even topics like gender parity are still work in progress.
Yeah.
What other opportunities do you foresee?
I guess what I'm saying in not cowering down is that's when we need to step up and seize opportunities and seize the things that we thought were never for us. I think there's a huge demand for women in any sort of sector of the world, especially in trade. We know that women who are involved in trade do better than those that don't. The private sector, in the government, this is what I'm trying to say. Whereas maybe you would have felt that you do not belong, there's no space for you. This is the moment to say, I'm going to take this opportunity. I do belong here. There's power in diversity. You cannot even ignore that. And I feel like this is the moment where we really need to push that and say, we matter.
Yeah, exactly. I really like that. Just recognizing that, again, we've got the agency.
Yes, agency.
Yeah.
I think this is it. Some people feel so powerless, right? People have lost their jobs. People have lost access to healthcare. People have lost their identities. They've built their careers, they've built programs, they've built so much, and people have lost so much. And I feel in this time of hopelessness, we shouldn't forget that we do have agency.
Yeah.
we have power in our own hands. We drive our own cars, we drive our own lives. And I think this is where, we need to remind ourselves that and lean into that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that ties in really well with also the theme of the International Women's Day 2025, which is accelerate action.
Okay.
Accelerate action by reclaiming the agency that we have as individuals.
Reclaim your time.
Exactly. We're definitely going to be doing that. Kholo, it's been such a joy talking to you.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Oh, I loved it too. Thank you to everyone who watched this till the very end. For more interviews like these with inspiring personalities in Geneva in the world of international trade, please follow us on Geneva Trade Platform, our YouTube channel, and our socials. And if you're interested in learning more about what Kholo is doing, she can also be found on LinkedIn, right?
On LinkedIn, yes, please follow me.
Exactly. All right, that's it for today.